Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding. Yes, a new name. And today we will be comparing Derek Lunsford at the Olympia 2022 versus the Arnold Classic Top 3. Was the Arnold Classic 2 months ago? Yes. Is this video still relevant? In my opinion, also yes. All these guys will be at the Olympia for sure. Andrew Jack still needs to qualify, but it's Andrew Jack. There's no way in hell he's not qualifying. And besides Hadi Chupin, we're probably looking at a mixture of your top 5. And of course, all these guys will improve, right? But I just want to get a slight preview of what it would be like if Derek was not only at the Arnold, but what we can maybe expect for all these guys going head-to-head at the Olympia. Could Derek have won the Arnold? Where are these guys going to stack up the Olympia? Let's get into the video and see if we can kind of dissect this. In these comparisons, I'm always going to rank the bodybuilders. And how do I do that? Well, since I have 4 guys, for example, today, I'm going to rank each one of them in each individual pose 1 to 4. So in my opinion, if Nick Walker is ahead in a pose and he's ahead of everybody else, he's going to get first place. That's 1 point. If Andrew Jack is the last place in that given pose, I'm going to give him 4 points for being in 4th place. Then I'll add up all the scores together, and like an actual bodybuilding show, this is exactly how it's judged at a bodybuilding show, the lowest score is going to win. With all that in mind, let's get into the video. Starting with the front relaxed. Usually I don't do these symmetry rounds. I just don't have enough of the pictures. Now I do in this comparison. In fact, all these are going to be HD photos for the most part. As you can see, we don't have one for Nick Walker in this pose, but all of these are going to be HD photos from Gilco Productions, and they're going to be from the individual posing routines. The NPC News Online has not released the HD stage photos of the Arnold yet, so I can't just stick Derek into these guys' top 3 comparison at the Arnold. That would have been a lot more convenient, and I wouldn't have had to scale so many of these guys. But unfortunately, the NPC hasn't released their photos yet, so I just took screenshots of Gilco's videos whenever these guys hit the poses and just stacked them all together and tried to scale it as best I can, which, in all honesty, isn't very good, but at least we do have HD photos. In this front relaxed, this is a silhouette pose all day long. We're looking for the best X-frame, and for my money, although he's a bit shorter, I'm going with Derek Lunsford, right? Best X-frame by far. With that vacuum he's pulling, if we just turn the lights off and had a singular light behind him and just saw his silhouette, that is the craziest X-frame, right? Easily winning this pose. In my opinion, second has to be Samson Dauda. He has a very good X-frame too, but if we actually kept the lights on, we'd see he is thickly muscled everywhere. So he doesn't have as good of an X-frame as Derek, but it is the second best. And then Andrew Jack, I put him in third. He's all right. He just needs to fill out his frame a bit more and make those proportions even crazier. Andrew Jack is already on a good trajectory, though. This is still an X frame. It's not like our 4th place, Nick Walker, where, like Blessing and Woodaboo would say, this is just the fridge kind of look. The legs, it really exposes his lack of quad sweep here, and then his thick waist, it's a compounding problem. A thicker waist makes your legs look smaller, and less quad sweep makes your waist look thicker. It's a compounding problem for Nick Walker, and this is why he's going to get 4th place in this pose. Now going to the front double, my eyes are immediately drawn to Andrew Jack, and in my opinion, he wins this pose. Now, I understand that Nick Walker has the best arms, not only in the world right now, maybe besides Michael Kristo, but some of the best arms of all time. However, Andrew Jack's arms are the second biggest, and he's bringing all the aesthetics that Nick Walker isn't. I could see an argument for Samson, right? He has the mass, more mass than Andrew, pound for pound, but not the aesthetic appeal. But his aesthetic appeal is close to Andrew's. If Andrew's a 10 out of 10, Samson's like a 9 out of 10. So if you want more mass, and you're not placing as big of an emphasis on the arms and you just want maybe more completeness and again more mass, you can go with Samson. But for my money, since Andrew has the second best arms and is just aesthetically gifted in this pose is for aesthetic guys. Aesthetic guys always have a better time in the front double bicep. I'm going to give it to him. And then in that close second, I will actually put Samson ahead of Nick Walker. Samson's arms are actually the weakest out of everybody here, but like I said earlier, he has the X-frame and he has the mass, right? So I'm going to put him in second with the caveat that I can certainly see him in first. I'm not knocking for him. For me, though, Andrew wins this pose, putting Samson in second. I wouldn't be too upset if you put Samson in first. Really, I can even see an argument for all of these guys pretty high up. Like, you can probably exchange a couple places. And then for third and fourth, honestly, even though Nick has the best arms up here, I'm putting him in last place. He has the best arms, but it's not just about the arms. And then Derek's arms, although they don't have the peak or the separation, they're better than Samson's. And he has everything else that Nick Walker wish, he had. Small waist, good X frame. He just has a more pleasing pose. Not the best arms by far, but a more pleasing pose. I'm going to put all these guys in this grouping. I'm thinking they all have different strengths, but I think Andrew has most of those strengths. He's missing the least, has the aesthetics, has an okay amount of mass, has the arms. Andrew, Samson, Derek, Nick, in that order. Now in the front lat spread, you can see that we don't have Nick Walker in this pose. And why is that? Well, he didn't hit it in his individual routine that Gilco filmed. We know that Nick's front lat spread is his worst pose, and he knows that. That's why he didn't hit it. So with a combination of him just blatantly not hitting it, and we know how it is. I'll pop up a picture of an older lat spread on the screen. It's just not that good. I think we can confidently put him in fourth place. I don't think anybody would be too upset with that. I'm sure Nick would admit that too. But going straight to first, I got to put Samson in first. My eyes are immediately drawn there. Putting his hands on his waist, it really accentuates his X-frame. Plenty of lat flare here. I'd like to see more details in the chest and shoulders. They're all right. The chest is greatly thick, and his abs, they're still slightly visible. Not as good as Andrew's, but they're still pretty visible. Waist is tight, and then the legs, they're the best out of these three guys. Now, I would have put Andrew in second, pushing Samson, but Andrew just has this very, very distracting lat issue. As you can see, that right side of his, he just can't pop it out. There's just no mobility, and this kind of crept on him in the side tricep. There's maybe just some mobility issue on this side, right? And for me, this is very, very distracting. It blows the whole pose for him. I have to put him in third, right? I could have had him pretty close to Samson, maybe even an argument for winning it. I don't know if I would have placed him ahead. I could have seen an argument for Andrew winning this pose because of the detail in the chest and the shoulders, and the quads are comparable. Samson's are much bigger, but Andrew has a lot of separation there. But that that lat imbalance is just too much for me. I'll put him in third. I'll still have him beating Nick Walker though. And then Derek, I'm going to place in second. I can certainly see an argument for Andrew still beating Derek, even with that lat imbalance. But all things considered, Derek is just kind of default second in this pose. Now, this is usually where Nick Walker can make up some ground in the side poses and in the back poses. But honestly, today, I just don't see it. I think he escapes fourth simply because Andrew just doesn't have as much mass pound for pound as some of these other guys. He has plenty of mass. I understand he's almost 300 pounds on stage. He's probably like 290s, 280s on stage. But pound for pound, because he's taller, he's just not filling out his frame as much. And in these side poses where we're judging the thickness from the side and how thick you are, shoulder to shoulder and with a good side leg, he lacks a couple things. So I'm going to put him in fourth. Plenty of detail. Honestly, this is going to be a great pose once he fills out. He just needs to do that, fill out. So I'm going to put him in fourth. Very good pose for him, though. No one's a loser in this pose, certainly. And then in third, this is crazy because I said Nick Walker may be able to make up some ground here, but honestly, I prefer Derek and Samson over Nick. Nick's pecs are just a bit smaller. Not that they're not thick. It's just they take up less area on his physique from the front, right? His pecs just take up less space than a Derek. As you can see, Derek just has more pec. More of his torso is taken up by his pec, right? But good side leg on Nick. Literally everything is fine. It's just I think Samson and Derek do certain things, most things better than Nick. So I'm going to have to put him in third. Again, no one's a loser in this pose. Everyone's very good. And then I'll probably put Derek in second. I really like Derek's side leg here. Very good in terms of separation. We got some lines in the glutes, a big line down the middle for between the quad and ham. And cap delt. Nick certainly beats him in the arm and probably the delt, but this is the side chest. Derek beats him I think in detail, because Nick's just not squeezing that hard, maybe, because I feel like Nick definitely usually does and should have more detail than Derek. But for whatever reason, Derek's beating him right here, even with shittier Olympia lighting. And again, the pecs are just overall bigger. But don't talk about big pecs without talking about Samson. Those things are fucking boulders. Good shoulder, pretty good arms, great side leg. He's basically everything you can want in this pose. So I gotta put him in first, Derek in second. And then, of course, Nick in third, Andrew in fourth. All right, and then now turning around for the 3 back poses I have. Yes, I do have a bonus third one. We're starting with the back double here, and I can see a clear divide between half of these guys and the other half. In my opinion, there is a clear divide between Andrew and Samson, who are fighting for third and fourth, and then there's another level, another bump up where Derek and Nick reside. As you can just see, there's just a difference in the level of backs, the polish overall between Derek and Nick, and then Andrew and Samson. So let's start with Andrew and Samson. Honestly, we all know that this is Samson's weakest body part, probably the weakest pose as well. His back just needs a little bit more time, but he's been able to improve literally every single time he's been able to step on stage in any amount of time. A couple weeks, whether he's had almost a year, he can make drastic improvements no matter what time constraint he is under. So this is a very good pose for him, and you can tell he has improved, especially from last year's Arnold Classic, where he's had a full year to add some meat to that back. But honestly, I still don't think it's enough to beat Andrew, which is really saying something because Andrew's posterior chain needed a whole lot of work. Not only that, but the conditioning too. He needed to work on his hamstrings. He needed to work on his glutes. He needed to bring them in, really. He just didn't have very good conditioning from the front. And then his back, it was okay, but it just needed a little bit more. But now I see a bit of improvement everywhere in that posterior chain, especially in the hamstrings. I think he can do a better job flexing them to show a little bit more detail. I'd still give Samson the edge there simply because of better posing and he's actually flexing them. But in terms of the back, he's actually wider than Samson. And that may be because of height, but Andrew is in fact wider than Samson. Now, I think Samson has a little bit more detail in the actual back, but Andrew has a fair amount of detail. I'd say just probably a bit thicker and denser than Samson. But what really sells me on Andrew here for third place is the separation in the arms and the shoulders. Andrew's arms and shoulders are just plain bigger than Samson's, and they are more separated. So all of this put together, I'm going to give Andrew the slight edge over Samson. And then Samson has been winning a lot of the poses so far, so maybe you can give the other guys a little bit of a break. And then between Derek and Nick, this would be Nick's pose pretty easily. I think he beat everyone at the Arnold in this pose, but now he is standing to what I believe is the best back in the world right now. Derek is just amazing in this pose. In fact, the only area I would give to Nick is the hamstrings, but Nick's hamstrings are literally fucking insane. I've never used the word thick to describe hamstrings, but that's exactly what Nick's hamstrings are. They are thick. You can see it's not just strands usually how it is. You can see their hamstrings, right? You can see the different strands of the muscle. These are literally like power lines. These are huge fucking cables running in between his glute and knee. They're amazingly thick, amazingly separated, best hamstrings on the stage, and the only area I believe he beats Derek in. Derek gets him in the glutes very clearly. I think he gets him in the lower back. I think Nick looks a bit denser, but in terms of width and I think overall detail, it's Derek's pretty easily. And the width, it's really no contest. Derek's back is wide as hell. And then I guess the only other area I would give to Nick is the bicep peaks because he has some of the best arms in the world right now. So obviously I'd give that to him. But even the delts for Derek, and I guess the arms too, aren't that bad. Like Nick's not winning that handedly in the shoulders and arms. He only edges him out in this department because of the bicep peaks, but everything else, it's Derek's pretty easily. I'd put Nick in a firm second above the last two guys, but then Derek in a firm first. Before we jump into the back lat spread, I actually had Christmas tree shots for every single one of these guys, which is something I usually don't have. And I really wanted to commend Andrew Jacked because as you can see, looking at all four of these guys, Andrew is bringing the best Christmas tree. So I wanted to put all these four of these guys' Christmas trees on here because we usually don't see them, right? Christmas trees are, for whatever reason, maybe they just don't get as conditioned. I don't want to step on any toes, but that is a theory of why we don't see that many Christmas trees in bodybuilding anymore. We used to see great Christmas trees. Samir Bannout, Kai Green, even like Ronnie Coleman, Phil Heath. We used to see Christmas trees all the time, but nowadays we just don't see them as much. And honestly, out of all four of these guys, I would expect Derek or Nick to have some good Christmas trees. You can see a good amount of separation from Nick and Derek. But for an actual true blue Christmas tree, which again, we do not see very often, you really got to give credit where credit is due and really commend Andrew Jack for bringing a top-notch Christmas tree. I'm not going to grade this pose because it's not a mandatory, even less so than the front relaxed was. So this is just in here to give Andrew Jack a little bit of credit. He's definitely improving in this area, and he killed every single guy if this was a mandatory pose, the Christmas tree shot. Now on the back lat spread, I think this is Derek's. Again, Derek's absolutely killing it from the back. His hamstring looks a bit better here. Nick Walker's still blowing him out of the water in terms of the hamstring, but glutes, again, Derek's. Lower back, Derek's. Width, Derek's as well. Andrew and Samson, not Andrew, but Samson may be a bit wider simply because he's taller, but for actual like pound for pound width, it's Derek's all day. Not only does Derek have plenty of width, but he has all the details. You can see the erectors, you can see the traps, you can see the rear delts, lats, where they begin and start, begin and end. You can see every single muscle group in Derek's back clearly separated, and he has the width to match. An easy pose for him. Now in second place, and this is a good feat for him, I'm going to put Nick Walker. And this is a good accomplishment because Nick Walker's back lat spread pose wasn't usually as good, but I think he's really improved it. He doesn't have the detail that Derek has, right? He doesn't have that clear separation in every single muscle group, but he does have that gnarly hamstring, pretty good glute, and he just has that dense, thick back. It doesn't show much detail, but you can just tell that back is thick, right? Those are some thick slabs of muscle on there. I'm going to put him in second. Now, for third, I'm actually going to put Samson in third. I can see an argument for, if we're talking pure width, because Samson being taller, he's going to have a lot more width than some of these other guys. I could see an argument for you placing Samson in second over Nick, simply because on width alone, but Nick has plenty of width, but he also has a lot more thickness and density than Samson does at this time, and a better hamstring and glutes than Samson does. So while Samson may have a bit more width, and I can understand why you grade that a little bit more heavily and you weight that a bit more heavily in this pose. It is the back lat spread. We're judging the width mainly. But for my money, Nick does enough in the width department and brings everything else to topple Andrew and Samson in this shot. And then speaking of Andrew, I'm just going to put him in fourth. He's just not, he doesn't have the width to match any of these guys or the thickness. He's just the most mediocre in this shot. All right, now the side tricep. This is really a battle between Nick and Samson. Now, this is usually Nick's pose for me, right? This is hands down his pose just about every single time he hits it, no matter what lineup he's in. He has a great side tricep, textbook side tricep. I wish he would go back to hitting it with the staggered foot stance, kind of like how Dorian used to, where the far foot is a little, staggered behind him. I really like that, but he's just doing it, just like side chest placement right now. It still works, but I obviously prefer the old school one. Now, usually, this is Nick's pose, but honestly, Samson beats him in terms of thickness. And what are we judging here from the side chest and tricep but thickness? In the side leg, Nick has more separation, and in the stomach, it's clear. This is the only area I think Nick wins decisively. And then the tricep, Samson's is bigger, but Nick's is clearly just more defined, and it looks like a textbook tricep. Like I said, every other area is clearly Samson's. I think Samson even has a better delt here, more mass in the delt, and clearly thicker pecs. You can take your pick, but because I'm just very partial to Nick's separation, I'm going to give him the edge. I can completely understand if you put Samson in front, and I wouldn't bat an eye at that. And I think if Samson really wants to seal the deal in this pose, he just needs to be a tad drier, a tad more separated, because his tricep, like I said, is already bigger than Nick's. I'm going to put Samson in second place, a very close second place. If really his tricep is a bit more separated, I think even me, a Nick Walker, lover could be tempted to put Samson in first. I'm actually going to put Derek next. He's just kind of eh. His tricep is all right. Not too much detail on the pecs. Side leg's pretty good. Stomach is sunken in, but you don't have that blocky separation that Nick does. So it's just kind of meh. And then Andrew Jack, like I said earlier, for the right side, him having little issues in the front lat spread with mobility, I think this is translating to the side tricep, because when he was doing it like how these other guys are doing it, straight, side view, he couldn't really snap it back. He looked very, very uncomfortable. And then, of course, he just doesn't have a very good tricep to begin with. All these guys have better triceps than him, even Derek. Andrew, like I said earlier, needs to fill out his frame a bit more. So he turns to the side, shows off his quad and abs a bit more. In my opinion, this is technically kind of cheating. I use the term cheating very lightly. I can see an argument if we're judging this the way he's hitting it, proportionally to Derek. I think Andrew could be placed ahead, but Derek's hitting it traditionally, so I got to give him the edge over Andrew, and just for a bit bigger tricep as well. And then for the abs and thighs, this is Andrew Jack's pose all day. He's Flex Wheeler 2.0, and who had a better abs and thighs than Flex Wheeler? Andrew Jack is up there. Not quite as good as Flex Wheeler, but he's very, very close. He has the most separated abs down the middle, to the side. The obliques are in, the serratus is in. Pretty good quad sweep. Nothing like Samson's quad sweep, but it's probably the closest to that. Just standing straight on, seeing the amount of quad sweep head on. He doesn't need to turn out his legs like Derek's doing or anything. Pretty good quad sweep there. Great abs. Honestly, some pretty good thickness to the pecs as well. That's what I'm really noticing. This is Andrew's pose, hands down. If I had to put anyone in second, usually I'm pretty partial to Nick Walker's abs and thighs. I can understand why people aren't like a huge fan, because he doesn't have the taper of, like Andrew Jack. But Nick does usually he has great blocky abs, and blocky in a good way. Now his waist is wide. Yes, they're on a wider waist, but he does bring that separation, those wider abs. And that's okay. But I just feel like I've seen them sharper. And because of that, I think Samson maybe slightly edges him out. I really like Samson's shot here. His abs are in, his obliques shredded. I'd like to see the quads a bit more separate, especially this one he's bringing forward. But honestly, I like this pose so much. I've got to put Samson in second, Nick in third. And then I'm just going to put Derek in fourth, simply because he looks, one, a little uncomfortable, but also he's just displaying the least amount of separation. Yeah, he has pretty good quads here, right? But in terms of the abs, he has the least defined and separated abs out of all four of these guys. I got to put him in fourth. And then the most muscular, like I've said time and time again, Andrew Jack needs more time filling out his frame. And then in this pose, he looks awkward. Like, what even is that? He hit a couple variations, none of which were that good. He needs to really figure out which one he wants to hit and fill out his frame, come back and hit it better. Because this crab, he has a lot of detail, but it's just, I think the hands on hips is probably better for him. But either way, he just needs to fill out his frame, right? We're looking for the most muscular in this pose. This is why Nick Walker and Samson are going to do better in this pose, because they have more muscle on their frame. Andrew just doesn't have it. Now, I am going to put Derek slightly above Andrew, simply because Derek has more mass. Andrew has more detail, but we're looking for overall mass here in the most muscular. I'm going to put Derek slightly ahead. I'm a conditioning guy. I really like detail too. I can flip-flop these two, but in my opinion, Derek and Andrew are clear third and fourth. You can switch them around. I'm going to put Andrew in fourth, Derek in third. But this is another scenario where Samson and Nick are pretty ahead of the other two guys. Now, between the two, I can see an argument for both. They're both hitting very similar versions, so we can just go body part for body part. Nick Walker's winning the delts and the arms very clearly. Although Samson's delts, he credit where credit is due, he has improved there. Even Nick Walker's quads, with the amount of separation he has, are pretty good, but Samson's sweep, if we saw these guys right beside each other, if you saw that live stream, it was no comparison. Nick's quads are separated, but Samson had sweep for days. But I think with Nick bringing in his arms closer and hiding the gap between his torso and his arms, we can't really see that. And he has very good, those blocky abs are coming to his rescue again. He has the wide waist, but he has the blocky abs to make up for good blocky abs, good separation. And he beats Samson in the stomach department. Samson's abs are okay, but Nick's, especially when the waist really isn't an issue, Nick's going to win. So the only area I'd give to Samson in this pose is the thicker chest and maybe the quad sweep, but Nick does enough with the separation. I'd be fine giving him this pose, and in fact, I am going to give Nick this pose. This is the most muscular pose. We're looking for the freak. We're looking for mutants. Nick Walker is the mutant. He's the pound for pound, probably the biggest guy on the stage. Yes, Samson is about 300 pounds, but pound for pound, being at like 5'6", 5'7", Nick Walker's absolutely massive. He's bringing that freak factor. He's bringing that conditioning. We're looking for that freak in the shot for the most muscular. It's got to be Nick's pose. All right, so I went ahead and tallied up the scores for everybody, and here is the ranking. In fourth, we had Andrew Jack with 27 points. And then in third, we had Nick Walker with 24 points. And then in a very close decision, just 1 point separating these two, we had Derek in second with 20, and then Samson in first with 19. Just going off the mandatories, that means if I had Derek just put into that top 3 at the Arnold, he would have been around second place. But I feel like maybe if they were together, although Samson was really improved at the Arnold, it was going to be very close if they were actually side by side that day. Honestly though, if I really did see them side by side, my gut feeling is to say that Derek would have won that day. I think what's going to be interesting is this year's Olympia. Going into this, we kind of have this new judging criteria. Not really new, but it's ever evolving, of course, where we are focusing more on mass with class guys. This whole sentiment of mass aesthetics, mass with class, I really feel that that's why Nick Walker got second place at this Arnold in the first place, really, because Andrew represented a lot of aesthetics, didn't fill out his frame as much though, didn't have that mass. And then Nick was the opposite of that, had plenty of mass for his frame, but had the least amount of aesthetics between Andrew, Nick, and Samson. And then when you put Samson in the mix, he is a nice mix of both, brings plenty of aesthetics and fills out his frame. And that's why I believe they gave him the dub over Nick Walker. And I think guys like Hadi Chupin and Derek Lunsford are guys that do bring both a good level of mass, but also bring an aesthetic element to it. It'll be very interesting to see what happens at the Olympia. I don't know if Derek can beat Nick. I don't know if he can beat Samson. We'll see how much Andrew can improve over this year. We'll see how much Samson continues to improve, because he always does. And I'm sure Nick Walker's extra hungry after not getting the dub at the Arnold, even though I'm pretty sure he thought he was going to get that dub. We'll have to see how it all shakes out at the Olympia. Of course, I want to know your thoughts in the comments. If you guys think I'm absolutely wrong, if you disagree with a placing, maybe you disagree with a certain pose analysis I had, that's okay. Disagree with me in the comments. I love to hear it. This is the best part about the sport. It is what our sport is built on, is disagreement, right? Bodybuilding is an opinion-based sport. People judge this. They have a whole panel of judges, and I'm sure the judges have all kinds of table talk going on anytime they judge a show. And that's exactly what the comment section is used for in this scenario. So leave me a comment, leave me a like, go ahead and subscribe to Project Bodybuilding for more videos like this and all different kinds of videos pertaining to bodybuilding. And don't forget to use code DHudson5510 at risesupps.com. Using that code helps me out and gets you 10% off some amazing flavors between pre-workouts and proteins. There's amazing flavors at rise.com. Use that code DHudson5510. Again, leave me a like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys for watching.